Hello, on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather daily to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today, we have the great pleasure of having once again our dear Sonny Chase. She is not only the host of this show, but she is also the host of ABC Solutionary Sundays. She is the chief strategist for Whole Lifetimes magazine, the longest running conscious Life magazine in America. Sonny is a producer, a moderator, a musician, and a mythbuster, among many other talents. We're going to be having a very interesting conversation today with John Stephenson, but I'm going to let her tell you about it because we are just going to say now, Sonny, welcome to Mindalia. How are you?
Doing well. I'm doing well. We're getting, the days are getting shorter, the nights are getting longer, and I feel like we're sort of closing in a little bit. You know, there's so much to celebrate, and there's also so much to let go of. You know, I want to tell you about this event that I went to, and these people in LA were teaching. They have this organization where they teach people peaceful conflict resolution, and they're called resolutionaries. And we can go to that. It's at con.org, and they have all of these organizations where people get together and chat about if they're on different sides politically, or on different sides with the vaccination thing, or just especially with Thanksgiving coming up and everything, where we get together with our families and our friends, and we want to have a lovely peaceful time. And so I loved this thing. They had us all get up, and they had a big arrow, and they had like strongly disagree, strongly agree, and everything in the middle, and they would say something, and we went wherever, and then we were meant to get together with the people and have this specific conversation that's called CALM, and it stands for I actually connect, ask, listen, and mirror. Isn't that cool? So at this time when we're getting into more politics, and again we're getting to the family times, getting together and stuff, I feel like this is perfect timing, don't you?
It sounds amazing, and I truly wish that more people would have those tools, especially in these times in which we're so polarized. And we have talked about this so many times, that what is the truth? Because I'm fully convinced and completely, absolutely sure that I'm right, but the person in front of me has the same conviction. So dialogue seems impossible. And we, at least before, we didn't have tools like the ones that you are referring to, just available for everybody, for your neighbors, for the people in the community. And I would say it's a great omen to think that there are things like that happening, and it can prevent a lot of damage. At least I
When
see it like
people
that.
talk about, yeah, when people are talking about in the sacred community, and they're saying, gosh, all these things are coming up, or certain people who are in power, it's a blessing in disguise because it's bringing up all the animosity, it's bringing up all the negativity and everything that we've been pushing down in our souls, in the soul of America specifically. And of course, in America, so goes the world. And so many people have been saying that. And sometimes I'm like, okay, enough already. Like, how much more, how much deeper do we have to go? And there's so much fallout. There's so much collateral damage. I mean, there's just a lot happening. I think of Venezuela. I think of the immigrants. I mean, I think of just so many things that just continue. And yet, if it means that there are opportunities for us to understand that we have been skating through, perhaps in our communication with our family, friends, coworkers, people we really love, and if this is another tool, if this is another reason for this chaos that we're living in, to really realize, yeah, you know what, we do need tools for listening, we do need tools for communicating, for sort of taking the anger out of it, and the righteousness out of our way. Like you say, you have the conviction, the person you're talking to, well, they have a different set of facts. Perhaps they watch different TV, or they read different newspapers, or they live in a different community, and get different information, and to them it is 100% true. And so for us to find the way through that, because honestly, we do all want to get along. We do want the best for our children. We do want, we breathe the same air, we drink the same water, we're standing on the same earth, and we want the best for our kids. I believe that. I do believe that. It's just how do we get there?
Exactly, it's how we get there. Is that it? But it's so hard. Let me tell you, this happened a couple weeks ago. I was with a great friend of mine. You know, I have a degree in law. I'm from Venezuela, which is a country that was basically destroyed by the idea of communism. Then my great friend, she has a bachelor in political science, and she's from Russia. So we do have a set of beliefs of, we kind of understand in a way how a political system works. And we are both coming from, two places that were strongly damaged by the system. We were at a bar and this guy approached us and he had a very strong communist, feel, because he felt that, that we've been hurt and we need power and we need this and we need that. And we were like, it is impossible for us to make him understand that we went through that, or our families, we went through that and it didn't work. But he was convinced of whatever he was seeing in the news, that no, it's not like that, this doesn't happen because I saw in the, in the news. And I was like, no, I saw it. Like with my own eyes, I ran with a tank behind me for being in the streets requesting like a clean election system or whatnot. And we were both right, and that was the closing argument. I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna say that you're not right. You can't say that I'm not right. And this dialogue is not going to be productive unless we are a little bit more flexible about the
Yes.
way we feel. And my conclusion was that it's like it's a symbiotic system. Every time a system fails, empowers the other polarity, and we've
Mm-hmm.
been just like a seesaw, like, is that the way, a seesaw?
Teeter totter.
A teeter totter, exactly. They teeter totter in themselves, because whomever has been, they say in Spanish that when you've been burnt with milk, when you see a cow, you cry.
Mm.
So
Mm.
every generation that has been damaged in a way by a certain system is going to naturally lean towards the other one. But that has to end. I don't think that the generations that are starting to grow are going to need to be in a polarity. They have a sensitivity to actually, get the roots out of one system and the other one, and mix it to something that finally works. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
And yeah, and I think the guest we're having on today, John Stephenson, well, I think this would be very interesting for him to add into. And before I introduce him, though, I just want to say that to what you're saying, I feel like it's really about the questions. Someone very wise said that you learn much more about a person by the questions they ask than their blah, blah, blah. And I think it's really true. Of course, I've had a lot of practice with questions, and I feel like every time I do a show, it's another opportunity for me to go deeper and really find the questions, because when we ask someone a question, again, when we have Thanksgiving, I know this show's going to play, we're getting close to that time here in America. And when you ask a question to someone, it gives them, they want to chat, they want to share their opinion. And I think it creates an opening, instead of us just saying, well, this is what I think, or this is what you should do, or I really know better, or, I have all the answers. When I think it also communicates to somebody, when you ask a question, you're automatically saying, I don't have all the answers. Hence, I'm asking questions. Please, people. So, a while ago, I had John Stephenson on my show many, many years ago, and he wrote this really cool book that I love so much. It was so perfect, because it was called The Fullness of Joy. And it's such a beautiful, in some ways, not simplistic, but just very approachable book to read. And, just giving us the permission to have joy. I think so many of us feel that we need to work harder, or kind of joy is sort of a luxury, or it's sort of, I'll get there at some point, or when I retire or something. And John Stephenson sort of really gives us the permission to add joy into everything we're doing all the time. And for me, just when we're talking about kind of asking questions or allowing other people in, it's sort of that space that we open, not being so dense and, heavy and righteous and all about our whatever, but allowing the joy to kind of find its way in those cracks and crevices. And so, if it's okay with you, I think this is the time we should just bring John on.
This is the time. John, welcome to Mindalia. How are you?
John, welcome. I have
Thank
many things
you.
to say about you, but I just wanted to bring you on and just have you add into our conversation, because I can feel you. I can feel you wanting to chat with us.
Oh, well, thank you. No, it's an interesting conversation that you're doing with. It's so international, and the idea of right and wrong. And is there really? I mean, in the beginning of my new book, A Tua Man, it's the question is asked: is there a truth that? I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I get it exactly right.
Please do. And here, I'll show you guys the Atua Man. It's so beautiful, the cover. And then the back cover I love too.
Is there a reality that cannot be altered by perception? That was a statement from Sandra Knight, who is my partner and a beautiful mystic and a student of life itself. And I think that's leads right into what you two were saying about reality and people's truths. And somebody has an experience that they know is true, and somebody else has seen a newscast of that experience and says, no, it isn't true. So is there a truth that cannot be altered by perception? And I think that takes you then into the spiritual, because that's the only place you're going to find that kind of truth, because everybody has their own perceptions and their own feelings and their own experiences.
And isn't it that wonderful Indian sort of tale about when the different mice are on different parts of the elephant, and one is on the tusk, and one is on the tail, and one is on, in different aspects of the areas of the elephant. And for all of those, it is the truth, indeed, 100%. So they are indeed all on the elephant, but they have their different, like you say, the different perspectives, the different facets of the diamond that they're experiencing.
Right. Well, they take a limited experience and they extrapolate it and say, okay, this is the big universal truth, rather than saying, well, this is my experience with this particular situation. And it's very hard, I think, for people, especially today, we're so polarized, to see the big picture, to even want to know what other people are feeling and how they're viewing the world. Because it seems that there's so much fear in the world that people retreat into their tribes, their comfort zones, and they don't really want to know what other people think. It's threatening to them.
Yes, and I was just going to use that word fear, and I was wondering if joy is the sort of antidote to fear. I mean, what is the antidote? I mean, I think in some ways it's security, but I think it might be something deeper. And I think that when you're talking about the fear of community and all that, I do feel like it's people feeling like they don't have quite enough, so they then feel so much like they have to hold on to what they have. And so if a governmental policy or person says, well, we're going to take one more breadcrumb from you, it's just, no, I don't have enough breadcrumbs as it is. Please don't take my last breadcrumb, or whatever. Don't you think that's sort of part of what's happening, this sort of illusion of lack and limitation?
Because I think people retreat into what is comfortable for them. And really, to me, the antidote to fear is truth. But now, again, we're getting into, is truth relative, or is there a truth that is beyond, that cannot be altered? And that truth is spiritual. You have to find your own spiritual center. And when you do that, then you start relating to people not as their persona, not as what they're projecting, but as a human being that is the same as you, that has the same soul, that has the same consciousness. They might have different experiences, but the idea that we're all different is is true on one level, but on the deepest level, no, we all are experiencing the same life on this planet, and we have to start realizing that even as we appear different, we're really in a shared experience, and the more we can give the recognition, the spiritual recognition to another, the freer and the more happier we will be. Less conflict.
Beautiful. Indeed. And I just want to tell our watchers and viewers and listeners and everything a little bit about John, because we sort of brought him on without any edification whatsoever. A couple things I want to say, and then we'll just sort of drop it as we go along, John, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
But I want to let people know, I want to say first and foremost, and then you probably will correct me on that, because I'm sure there's other first and foremost you have, but I do want people to know that John is a master scholar of Joel S. Goldsmith. And for many of you, I'm sure many of you know this master himself, and who's no longer with us, but many of the masters we know, people like Michael Beckwith and so many others, were great followers of Joel S. Goldsmith. He was a great spiritual teacher and knower, I would say, many years ago, and for many years. And John's mom had the great pleasure and privilege, I would say, of being with him in his company and touring with him and speaking with him, and I know she kept many of his notes and things like that. And John kind of grew up at his feet, to say, sitting on the floor listening, and playing with trucks and listening, and getting all of that into his DNA all the time. And so I want to share that, John, because I feel like that experience for you really informed a lot of your spiritual teachings and your spiritual books, like The Fullness of Joy, or even, of course, you and Sandra. Well, you wrote and directed Joel S. Goldsmith, The Man and His Message, and I know Sandra wrote and worked on it as well. And
yeah, she produced it.
Right, and produced it. Thank you. So so first, maybe you would like to tell people, because then that might lead us into the Atua Man. So it sort of, sets a stage a little bit. So just a little for those who may not know, those 12 people out there who may not know.
Well, Goldsmith was considered the great 20th century mystic, and mysticism has always been kind of relegated to the East, and he really brought two words into the Western lexicon: meditation and consciousness. And this was in the late 50s, before the big social revolutions that took place in the 60s. And a lot of them were based on his revelations that started changing the way the Western people would look at mysticism. Though in Christianity, there's always been the mystical aspect of it. There's always been the saints and the mystics who have, usually they've been punished because they haven't gone along with the dogma of the authorities. So authorities always want to marginalize those that don't agree with them. So he was a great mystic. He brought in, through Christian terminology, that which the East had known: meditation, consciousness, healing, spiritual healing. People like Deepak Chopra, who has an Ayurvedic background. Basically, the mysticism of Joel's teaching was similar to that. Joel thought that Shankara, who was the master that devised the Ayurveda, was one of the great spiritual beings of history, along with Buddha and Jesus and Lao Tzu and all those great people who have tried to elevate and inform mankind that we don't live in this separated world. We live in a world that is connected in consciousness. So we did a movie of him. My background then has been a mystical background. And then the novel, I wrote my first novel. I thought that it's almost easier to present mystical principles through story rather than through nonfiction. So I thought, okay, what do I
Amen.
love? I love adventure. So it's basically an adventure story, but it's about a mystic and how he has to deal with the world and how the world comes after him to try and discredit not the mystical principles, which are universal, but him, because people see that there's power in this and they want the power for themselves. And so that's basically the thrust of the novel. But I can then give spiritual principles in a context that isn't so preachy. I've got characters, and I can have debate. And it's different than when you're writing a nonfiction and you're just outlining, principles for people to follow.
Well, thank you for that. Because again, I think that many people of a certain age know about Goldsmith, and maybe younger people don't as much. So I appreciate you giving people the information about that. And I love that you had. I'm just going to read this really fast because this is from Jerry Jampolsky, who I know so many of you guys know, and he wrote about this. Gives you an idea about what the book is. I think this is great. A compelling, epic sea adventure that weds high action with spiritual revelation. Amen. I love that. A page-turning exploration into the nature of reality. Yet to a man faces the trials of living in a material world from the illumined consciousness, and in the process takes us on an unforgettable journey in the fabric of creation. John Stephenson makes us ask ourselves, what is true and what is illusion? And I think that is such a beautiful description of what the book is. And again, thank you for writing a novel, because I love the story. I'm a little tired of people pointing fingers at me and telling me what I should do in a book.
Exactly.
Well, you should do this, you must do that, and you must, I'm just tired of it. So the story, it's like music, it can just wrap itself around you, or you can just kind of wade through it and kind of go at your own pace and get what you do out of it. And so, yeah, so was it a journey to write this story? I mean, you went on a journey yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people think that it's autobiographical, which it isn't, but as any author uses the people that he knows and characters or people that he's come in contact with and takes off from them. But I did sail the South Pacific. I have had a lot of experiences in it with different cultures and exploring mystical principles. So, I think it gives it a reality where you're coming out of experience. I mean,
Yes.
But look at the Harry Potter books. I know that Rowling didn't go to Hogwarts, but there are schools like that, and people do experience that, and it makes it feel real. I mean, it's total fantasy. She's able to then present this whole drama between good and evil, magic and reality, illusion and reality, in a way that just so captured the imagination of so many young people. And I think that's a terrific gift, because it breaks down the rigidness of a lot of conventional thinking that only this is possible. It opens the realm of possibility to so much broader, to so many more people that would think, oh, I could never do this. But then they read a book like Harry Potter, or they read some other novel that takes them on an adventure, and then they also learn principles.
Yes, and you do live in Hawaii, and the book takes place in London, Hawaii, the wild seas of the Polynesia and adventures that way. And so you definitely know Hawaii, and I appreciate how you have brought in that, because many people, and I only till recently didn't really understand the sacredness of Hawaii. Like, we think of India, we think of Bali, for Americans, for example, we think of certain areas that are sacred, Machu Picchu, this sort of thing. But Hawaii, gosh, I mean, the sacredness there is just so deep and so gorgeous. And of course, there's a lot of how do I say, pain there too. There's a lot of pain with the different people who come through in the wars and things like that. So there's blood in the land as well as tears, as well as sacredness, which I
Yes.
think is very real. You know, makes it much more real.
Well, I think that worldwide we're seeing this kind of tension between indigenous peoples, native peoples, and Europeans who went around and colonized so much of the world. And I think it's history that we have to deal with. I don't think that native peoples necessarily want to go back. I shouldn't presume, but go back to a way of living that doesn't include modern conveniences, but yet at the same time, they don't want to completely move away from their own cultural and ethical and spiritual roots. So I think there's a lot of balance that needs to take place in these societies that are mixed, that are former colonies, or that have had this mix of people. Well, even in America, even our whole sense of being a country of immigrants, not only do we have to deal with all the different people that have come to America, we have to deal with our past, with the indigenous people, and with slavery. So America has got a huge karma, you might say, to deal with.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that again, with stories like the Atua Men, I think it's they're asked. I mean, they're okay. So, like for me, I mean, it was scary for me when I was reading. I just immediately had kind of a fear for the people when they were going on the boat and they were going out into the high seas. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm a mom, I don't know what it is, but I was just like, people, are you sure you're going to be safe? And so when they went out in the seas and, I'm just kind of like, oh, I just want things to go well. And, just like let everything, did you guys have enough food? Like, I don't know. I was just so like that. And, all through the book, it took me on so many journeys. I mean, just personally. And then it's just fun to be, in some aspects of it, it is sort of escapist. It's like, I am not going to go on a journey like that. I really don't plan on doing that. I mean, it was scary enough for me to read about it in a book. I'm not going to do that myself. So to kind of just vicariously go on this crazy journey, and that's, again, guys, that's like one part of many aspects of this. It's a very multifaceted story. But yeah, so I mean, people do have that opportunity to have that adventure they may not have in their real life.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you reacted that way, because that's that's kind of the point. I want, it is an adventure. I love adventure. I love getting taken up with characters and taken on this ride. I wouldn't do that again. That was something that I did when I was in my 20s. I think the young people do things. I hope they're doing these kind of adventures today, where people are really exploring the boundaries of what our planet has to offer, and exploring every aspect, going to different cultures. I think to me, one of the great joys of life is the diversity of the people, and
yes.
the way the way they practice life. I mean, the dancing, the food, the music, all the different things that how boring would this planet be if everybody was the same?
Well, I so agree with that. And for example, one of the things I want to mention, two things I want to make sure I get them in. One, I do want to talk about Jason specifically in a minute, so remind me. The other thing I do want to say regarding the idea of our differences is, in living in America, we have a certain kind of culture. And then at a certain point, for example, people would say that it was normal for teenagers to kind of rebel against their parents and sort of be embarrassed by their parents, and oh my god, mom, just stop dancing, or don't do whatever, or you're just embarrassing me at school. And then I had Venezuelan students that came and lived with me, and they were so shocked at how the teenagers were like not with the parents and the grandparents and the aunties and everything and the uncles. It's like, what is that? And I thought, well, what do you mean, what is that? That's like, isn't that, written in some Freudian book or something? Like that's the way it is. And then I'm seeing Myrna right now laughing because then she said, no, Miss Sonny, that is not it. And so she had a family came and they came and visited our house and the aunties and the grandmothers. And I put on music and we were all dancing. And now my kids, because I kind of know how to move it, my kids are like, no, Mom, don't do that. No, no. But these people were just like, come on, Sonny, move it, shake it. And they were moving and shaking it. And the grandmother who was 85 was moving it and shaking it. And it was just no embarrassment for the 13, 14, 17-year-old kids. And I thought, this is so wild because we do think that a specific thing is like normal and natural. So it may be normal, but it's not natural. So, so I'm like, yay, we can shake it up and move it and crack through that and just have more joy and fun and not be so uptight, people. Come on.
Well, I
Let
think
go
I think
already.
it is our conditioning. I mean, I was conditioned like you, but when I went to the South Pacific, I saw that their culture is that children didn't really belong to their parents. They belonged to the community. And
oh, beautiful.
And so in these villages, and maybe the villages were, they're not big, so maybe they all were distantly related, but they weren't ingrown. But you had children living in separate houses. The parents, the aunties and uncles, grandparents, they all had their own places to live. They had a community place where they ate. But then the children had the children's house. And then everybody in the village disciplined the children. It wasn't like, oh, it's my kid. Don't you ever tell my kid what to do. No, the kids had to follow, what was the standard and the norm of the village, which was
interesting,
getting along, helping, because they had to work together these were places that, they didn't have huge economies. They were, they had to gather their food, they had to fish. I remember the owner of the boat I was on. At one time, we were following a trading steamer. And when the trading steamer got to some of these remote islands and offloaded all the beer and all the canned tuna and all this and stuff, the natives all just consumed that in one binge. And you didn't see what their culture was about. You just saw this imposed Western ease culture. And he said, we're not following the trading steamer. We want to be right in front of it. So we get to these villages before they get all the beer and the tuna and this, and we see how they really live. And it was like night and day. So it was
fantastic. Yes, and thank you for that, John. And then I know that there are so many cultures, excuse me, in Africa and different cultures where they've actually studied the people, Margaret Mead and Jean Houston, and seeing what would go on with babies when they were born and how they interacted with the community of the moms, of all the moms, all the women, and how much more actually how they developed way faster than American babies. The developmental stages, like sitting up, crawling, all these things were way more advanced. And then different things happened in the culture that slowed them down and balanced it out. But I was thinking, wow, it's fascinating that again, when I was learning this from the Venezuelans, I'm like, well, yay, these are my kind of people, because I could dance day and night. I used to say to my kids, if we were in a grocery store and they were starting to, maybe act up a little bit or something, I'd say, okay, guys, if you don't behave, I'm going to start dancing right here, right now. Or I'm going to start singing right here, right now. They would just be like, no. And they knew I would do it too. If we were in some theater and there were stairs that were going down and I'd say, come on, guys, or I'm going to start tap dancing down these stairs. And they would just run over quickly. But now they've gotten, of course, used to me and they find me, humorous, I think. But what is, again, the joy, the fun, and to learn that from Venezuela and see the example that what I thought was normal and natural and the way, so just accept it. Like, okay, my kids are going to, go through rapprochement and, you know, sort of separate out, that is the way it needs to be. It doesn't need to be that way. And so then it actually shifted how I was with my kids. And then there wasn't so much rapprochement as far as that goes, except that of course they, you know, got manly and did their own thing and weren't under my coattails. But it was such a cool thing to bring in, you know, to know that there's just all these other possibilities, and not just in my mind, but in reality, this can be. So thank you, Venezuela, for showing me that. John, I want to ask you before I just keep looking at my time, I want to make sure we get everything in. I want to talk about Jason for a second in the book, because I want to read this little bit and then I want to chat about Jason, because you were talking about how in the book they pulled him down. And I just find it interesting that we, in our culture, in many cultures, when there is a leader that sort of comes up, what happens with the, you know, what can ultimately happen. So I just want to read this a little bit to you guys. So this is sort of an explanation of the attunement. Some people think Jason St. John is an attunement and that his spiritual gifts had come from an initiation in the Hiva Islands of French Polynesia, but those who know him recognize that his healing gifts are a pure expression of his soul. Jason had sailed to the edge of hell in the South Pacific with his lifelong friend David Walker. David had been at Jason's side when he began healing people around the world, teaching the ultimate freedom, mystical awareness. But David walked out on Jason, vowing never to return. When Jason organized his work and hired Tony Bass to be the CEO of his ministry. Now Jason is a prisoner of that success, trapped by the organization he had set up to give him more freedom. And he needs David back at his side to regain his liberty. So this is sort of like a, you know, little bit about the book to kind of entice you guys out there. But Jason is such a cool character in this book because he's so, you know, he's kind of, I mean, there's just elements of like a Johnny Depp type. I mean, he's just sort of this like, loves, you know, just so free, you know, like if it just whatever he feels like he wants to do. And I also felt though that he had a real generosity of spirit. It was like he didn't want to leave David out. Like he didn't want to leave people out. It's like, come on, peeps, come on, peeps. Like the Venezuelan who came to my house, it was like, come on, dance, you know, just play. Like let go of your inhibitions and let go of your whatever's stopping you, and just be like me, like the stallion and the, you know, get out of the stable and just run free. That's kind of the vibe I felt about Jason. So I'm just interested in what you think about Jason, if you want to share with us, and also how it sort of goes where, you know, with leaders and how they end up being really lifted up and then torn down.
I think that, you know, mysticism, spiritual awareness is the ultimate freedom. If you really are comfortable within yourself and you see that the evils of this world really are not that powerful, especially when you have developed a spiritual consciousness, that you have a freedom. And freedom is very threatening to a lot of people, because people that want to control really don't want people to be free. They want people to obey the rules. They want people to do what's always been done. They don't want somebody to go out and show others that life can be lived with total joy, that life can be lived without pain and suffering. And this is basically the message of mysticism. So Jason's character is that, but he's also having to live in the world. And somebody that has an ability like I've given Jason, that he has a healing consciousness where just people get healed in his presence. It's just because he is so attuned, so at one with the universe, that perfection, that wholeness of the universe, just when people are in his presence, they whatever is restricting them, disease, families, whatever it would be, kind of dissolve, and harmony and joy are replaced. Well, that's quite threatening, but it's also so in demand that Jason becomes extremely wealthy. Wherever he goes around the world, people want to be healed. He generates a tremendous amount of money. So then with money comes this idea of, oh, we've got to conform. What do we do with the money? So he starts in an organization, brings in a CEO to manage the money. Well, that is kind of the death. I remember a story in the Old Testament in the Bible when the Hebrew people, they only had they had like prophets. They had spiritual people that would say, this is how you be free. But every other area around the world had kings, and they said that they wanted a king. And one of their great prophets, Samuel, said, are you really sure you want a king? You know what he's going to do. He's going to take your young men and put them in an army. He's going to go out and conquer things. He's going to take your women and rape them. Do you sure you want a king? And this is the nature of humanity, which I try to have a parallel in a way in this book, because Jason creates an organization that ends up oppressing him, trying to confine him, trying to get rid of him, trying to imprison him so that he can't be free, because his message of freedom needs to be controlled. And so that's kind of the big struggle. Can you be free in this world and be so free that you can earn money? And basically, it's not that you're living against the rules of love your neighbor as yourself, but you might not follow every rule that the government says that you need to follow. And therefore, people are going to want to stop you. And then you have jealousy. So people get jealous.
Right. And I'm so you're bringing up the point, and I know that we're going to be wrapping up. I'm just looking to see. We have about 5 more minutes, right, Myrna? So I want to remind us, or what you're bringing up again is that competition aspect or cooperation, the choice that we have in that. And gosh, there's so much of that right now. I feel like that hopefully is coming forward. And again, Jason was never about competition. He was always about cooperation, I felt. And he was almost sort of, naively going through his life, and sometimes that happens with people where they do have so many gifts, they don't even, they're not really aware of it. I mean, they just have beauty and they have money, and they just sort of have to go, let's just, not necessarily beauty and money, but they have the Midas touch. Let me put it that way. It just life works out for them. And of course, now we're learning about, we have for the last 12 years and more in the more above the equator, I'll say, the law of attraction and things like that, and how that works, and how it has to do with vibration and how we attract what we think about. And so the better your life's kind of going, it kind of just sort of keeps going that way, because you just surround yourself with great people and you just see things, like I like to say, sometimes I feel like I'm Mr. Magoo. I just kind of see good things around me. And sometimes my kids are afraid for me. They're like, Mom, do you see that negative lurking there? Do you see that negative lurking there? No, I actually don't. So, the idea of Jason kind of being like that until he's not, but he has that. And so I think that that's something that people are attracted to, but it's almost like, if we imagine like, what would it be? Some sort of animal, I won't even say, insect or something. It's like, or when someone's drowning, they want to live. And if someone's near them that's a great swimmer and all that, they'll just grab onto them and hold them to like pull themselves up. They may not even mean to be pulling that other energy down, but they just are doing it to pull themselves up. So I feel like, again, in the aspect of feeling that we have the permission, like let's just give people permission, John, to know that cooperation is safe. And it's the answer, and that this, competition or pulling the other guy down just to not drown ourselves. Because I do believe that. I don't believe people are necessarily bad. I just think people are just kind of feeling like they need help. So what do you think of that? And I know we're wrapping up, but I just wanted to ask you that. In relation to Jason.
Well, I think that Jason is, in a sense, a little naive, because he, people that I've heard stories of Einstein, people that just on a different wavelength, sometimes people don't understand them, and they can appear naive and appear to be kind of simple, but yet their attention is put into a different area of life. And Jason's attention is put into this expression of freedom. And he doesn't realize that that also can elicit from others that haven't developed their spiritual awareness enough, a lot of animosity and a lot of hatred and a lot of wanting to put down and cut it out because it threatens their sense of authority, their sense of belief. It's a lot about belief. That's one of the problems the country faces today. People believe things and they think what they believe is absolutely right. And if somebody doesn't believe what they believe, then they have to be wrong. And no, a belief is a belief. A belief doesn't have any substance to it unless it's backed up by spiritual truth.
As I have a great mystic that I love to chat about sometimes, Dr. Sue Porter, and what she says about that is she says, it's fine to have beliefs, just don't believe them. And so, John, I actually want to bring Myrna on at some point here, because I know I just can feel her wanting to chat. I know we have like 3 minutes, but I want to read one other quick thing about the book, because I want people to read it, and then I want you to tell us, John, how we can get in touch with you. But there's another little bit that I just want to read. The Atua Man, beautifully written by John Stephenson, is one of those rare books that brings together the hero's journey with sacred teachings and modern day magic. John weaves together friendship, loyalty, self-discovery, and spiritual awakening, painted over a scrumptious canvas of the Hawaiian Islands, the open seas, Polynesia, and London. A very unusual and mystical tale indeed. If any of you guys know how I speak, you might recognize that, because I actually wrote that. It's on the back of the book. But I do feel that way. That's why I wrote it. So yeah, guys. So John, let us know, and then Myrna, I'd love for you to chat about Venezuela or anything that you want to say about this book, whatever you think. But how do we get in touch with you, and how do we get the book?
The book is available on all outlets. It's Amazon, it's iBooks, it's Barnes and Noble, or you can go ask your local bookstore to say, "Oh, I've heard about this book. Can you order it?" Because I still believe in bookstores as much as everything. The internet is so convenient, but I think the idea of going to a bookstore is great. So it's available everywhere. I have a website that where all of my mystical work is. It's called AlohaMystics.com. Aloha, like Hawaii, mystics. And the book will be available through that site in December. We're just on our way. I'm giving seminars in Germany and France a little later this month. So actually this afternoon we leave for London. So we'll be flying over the Atlantic tonight.
Oh, and then guys, so then of course, if you go to the website, you can also find the Fullness of Joy and the movie that we talked about. And,
right.
Myrna, come on and play with me for a minute. Play with us for a minute. I know we have maybe two.
Yes, I've been actually listening to your conversation, and I'm very pleased. I love the feeling of accepting that maybe my truth is not the truth, and as much as it may feel as true, it may not be, and the freedom of opening to being wrong. That freedom of, stopping the fear. Because why are we so scared of saying, I was wrong, I made a mistake? When you are no longer scared of making mistakes, that gives you so much room to play, to try, to listen, to comprehend.
Exactly. And what do you think of the Atua Man? Isn't it cool to have a novel that has, spiritual practices and messages and journey?
It is actually my favorite genre, if I may say. I love the surreal and that natural surrealism, and so I'm looking forward to read it definitely.
Oh, thank you.
And
what do we do?
I need to ask you something before we leave. Where can we find Sonny Chase?
Oh, that, yes, of
Yes.
course. You can find me here next week. You can also YouTube me. There are a lot of the videos that I've done in different places at Sonny Chase, CHA, and then like yes.com, or you can find me there. You can find me Sonny Chase YouTube. And if you guys have questions or comments, or even want to be on the show or anything like that, you can send me an email at sunny@let'simagine.live. And then, of course, on Solutionary Sundays, every Sunday on ABC, and in Whole Lifetimes. And, all the regular things, Instagram, all that stuff. All that jazz.
Yay!
And who knows what will be next year. So when you ask me that question, perhaps there will be something else. Oh, and on Mindalia Music.
Of course, with Plant a Seed. If someone that is watching haven't seen Sonny singing, playing the guitar, you can go to Mindalia Music and you can see a great video there. I love it. I can't stop singing it.
Thank you. Plant a seed, people.
Yeah. We are then ready to go. We want to thank you for allowing the Mindalia TV cameras for being a channel for your ideas. Thank you, John, for sharing your time with us. Looking forward to get your book. And to you that are behind the camera, that are seeing us, remember liking, subscribing, not only this channel, but our main channel, Mindalia Televisión and Mindalia Televisao. We have content in Spanish and in Portuguese. We're sending you a very big hug, and until next time. Bye-bye.